Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is migration movements, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the movements of people from place to place, Alana McLaughlin, who will give us some information in reference to her background, education, and some of her experiences. And then, of course, Alana, after doing that, we will have you to get into the topic of migration movements. But before we do that, let's have you to talk about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of bringing you to us this morning, recognizing that you've been with us for about, the last 8 years, dealing primarily with some of the things that you're dealing with now. But this is a new season, and so let's start off by talking about migration movements throughout places.
Well, as you previously stated, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am a sophomore at the Nashville School of Arts, where I play trumpet. I am involved with Pearl Cone High School. I march in their band, and I do an array of things involving music, from piano lessons to playing trumpet. Now, my background education that got me here is I've always been a gifted student. Here in Nashville, they have an encore program where gifted learners do, extracurricular activities to exercise their mind a bit. And I knew from a young age that speaking and sharing knowledge was something that I wanted to do, and that's what brought me here today.
And of course, we're glad to have you here today. But Lana, let's talk about migration movements. And I think that we can truly say that wherever you look throughout the world, you find that people are moving from place to place. And as a matter of fact, one of the great discussions that we have today in American history and politics is what? The movement of people, immigration, migration, call it what you wish. But let's talk about the movement of people from that perspective. And then when we come to this second segment, we'll be more specific in reference to what we're talking about.
Well, the big question is, what is migration? Which is, I know a lot of viewers are asking, what really is migration? Now, the textbook definition for migration is, well, for human migration is the movement of people from one place to another, whether it be permanent, temporary, it's just the movement of people. For instance, migration could be as simple as going to work in the morning. You're moving, whether it be temporary or permanent. Now, migration can be either international, intra-regional, in all these different types that we'll get into in the next segment that describe how people move and why they move. Factors such as push and pull factors either bring people towards their country. For instance, freedom brings people to the United States, while push factors, where it could be war, famine, poverty, lack of sanitation, push people out of countries. Places like Haiti and other countries of the sort have more push factors than pull, just because of natural disaster and things that go on within the countries. Now, all these different types of migration are very, very important, especially in this day and age where we have a president who wants to end a certain type of migration, which is chain migration. And we'll get more into this in the second segment, but a basic overview of chain migration is when, or with the United States specifically, is when an American citizen can vouch for a family member in different countries to come here via green card, and whoever they bring can stay. And now Trump wants to end this because he believes that it allows uneducated and underqualified people to come into the United States, and useless people and things of the sort. But we'll get more into this in the second segment.
And so you talk about push, pull migration and all of these migration movements. And what you're saying is not only are they applicable to the United States, but anywhere in the world you find the basic kinds of migratory movements.
There's migration everywhere, every single continent, even Antarctica.
And so whatever you say about migration in reference to the United States, you can also say about migration in reference to another country or another region, but primarily migration means the movement of people from place to place. And of course, I think I like that definition. And so what we'll do, we'll wait until the second segment to get into the various forms of migration. But I think
specific migration streams.
Migration, what you call migration streams.
Yeah.
And that'll give our audience an opportunity to have an overview as you're giving now, and then we'll be able to move into that second segment and deal primarily with the various aspects of migration. And so I would like to simply say that I appreciate the overview that you've given. And when you first approached me in reference to this particular topic, I had my doubts about it, but I'm sure that what you've said so far has reassured me in a real sense that there's an essence, there's something in what you're saying in reference to this. And so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Okay, you sure don't touch it.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come.
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's given us some information in reference to migration movements. And of course, Alana, let's see if we can pick up where we left off the first segment and talk about the movement of people from place to place, nationally or internationally, as you indicated during the first segment. Let's talk about migration, define it in a real sense.
Now, in the first segment, we said that the big question for this episode this morning would be, what is migration? Now, like I said, the textbook definition of human migration is the movement of people from one place to another. Whether it be permanent settlement or temporary settlement, it's simply the movement of people. Now, migration has two major types. International, which is moving from country to country, for example, the United States to Canada, or intra-regional, which is staying within your country's boundaries. For example, it would be the United States, California to Colorado. That would still be in the same region. Now, these two types of migration are very important because they describe why people are moving and what they're moving for. For instance, international migration could be for jobs, for a better life, for better health care, to escape a country that's not doing so well. While interregional could be, say, for farmers, it would be, say, one piece of land you can't grow a certain crop on it anymore. So you move across, still within the same region, within your region's boundaries, but you move for smaller reasons. Now, international migration tends to be a little bit more serious in a way because usually there are bigger issues at hand when you choose to move internationally because, you know, people don't just wake up and leave their country.
Barriers in a real sense.
Yeah. While intra-regional is more I wouldn't say less serious because, for instance, in the Rwandan genocide, not everybody left Africa, but they left Rwanda and et cetera and went to different parts of Africa, went across the continent, but they left their country. So, but then there's a third type of migration that's not necessarily a type, but more of a form of it, which would be forced migration. And forced migration is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you're forced to leave your country, whether it be due to poverty or lack of sanitation, famine, or you're physically pushed out, say due to war or prejudice, racism, civil issues. You're being forced out of the country. It's not by choice at all. While the other two types can either be maybe by choice or maybe you just felt like you had to, but forced migration, no conversation, you have to leave. An example of forced migration would be Syrian refugees fleeing Syria. They have no choice. If they'd stay, they'd be killed or they would starve, etc. So that's a type of forced migration. Now, when you delve deeper into migration, you see that there are two main factors that make people move, that describe why people move. Push migration, or push factors, and pull factors. Now, a nice way to remember it is that think of someone pulling you towards them. You want to come. If someone's pushing you out, they want you out. So like I said, with the example with the Rwandan genocide, that would be a push factor. The people wanted to leave Rwanda because of all the issues that were going on. That would push you out. While people from third world countries look at countries like Canada and the US and continents like Europe and see that, oh, they're peaceful and they have things together. There's not, lack of sanitation or a big poverty issue or, lack of food, and there's not a lot of natural disaster. So that's a pull factor. They see that we're doing better than their homeland, so they want to come. So we're pulling them by exposing our happy factors. Now, these two factors really, they can just describe almost any circumstance to where you would have to migrate. And it's good to know what's a push and what's a pull, because if you're in a situation where you need to leave your country or wherever you're at, your state or wherever, you're going to have to name, well, you should name the push and pull factors of wherever you're going, just so that you don't get into a worse situation. For instance, moving from Syria to, say, 1990s Rwanda. That would be a lot more push factors than pull, so you wouldn't really want to go there. So that's something that refugees and migrants have to think about. Going even deeper into migration, we think of types of migration. Now, the biggest one that the U.S. is talking about would be chain migration. If you haven't heard President Trump talk about it yet, the textbook definition of chain migration is basically when, think of how a chain, it has links. One member goes somewhere and the rest follow, but how it relates to the United States is how we could be related to someone in, say, a third world